Hi there. I've just been watching a video by Conference Report, Fred. He was talking about free will and snooker, and particularly the billiard ball analogy of cause and effect, which got me to wondering, is it another example of the problem we get due to our dualistic thinking? Must it always be free will or determinism? It's an example of our struggle with the subjective experience, which is what we live, versus objective description, which is how we formally analyse what we live. I'm wondering if my feeling that I'm free to choose this or that, my sense of free will, which is pretty universal, if it is the subjective experience of the objective reality of determinism. That is, that free will is the way determinism feels. Maybe the Newtonian or billiard ball analogy of determinism has led us astray. It oversimplifies determinism. After all, it's pretty savage simplification of the causes of our decisions. The billiard ball analogy archetypally is about one determined outcome from one determining cause. But in reality, each decision I make, well, usually, is the outcome of potentially an infinite number of causes. I mean infinite in the sense that it could be analysed endlessly without even thinking of Aristotle's three other types of causes: material, formal, or final. For instance, even a decision as mundane as, will I take my coat out when I go out this afternoon? It's a decision I make freely, or it feels like it. I'm free to decide yes or no, but it is determined. It's determined by the weather, how long I'll be out, if it's going to be too heavy and bothersome to take with me, will I get hot in it, is it going to be light enough to carry, maybe an umbrella would be better, or should I take the car, is the coat too grubby for where I plan to go? And then there's even unconscious elements which come into play, like my mother always used to say, never go out without a coat. Or my father, who said, don't be soft, live dangerously. But then unconsciously, usually I do the opposite to what my father used to say, because we had issues. So then, of course, I might catch myself in that particular thought, and sort of a feedback loop, reflecting on my reasoning so far, and decide, well, it's time I cut Dad some slack and appreciated the value of his sayings. So it is good to be more open and chance it rather than playing it safe, I might think. This feedback cause might resonate sufficiently for it to finally resolve my feelings of indecision. So now I will have decided I will not take the coat. Objectively, the decision process has sort of terminated when my feeling of indecision has been resolved sufficiently for me to proceed. I feel that the answer will stand, and I can settle with that conclusion. I have made up my mind. It sure feels like free will to me. Is it the feeling of the objective act of processing the determinants that I needed to settle my state of indecision? With more important questions I meet in life, the process is even more complex, with a lot more unconscious factors playing a part, I guess. When I make a conscious decision, it's based on several things, including, though, the unconscious or factors which I'm fully or nearly unaware of at that moment. It can seem like a crowd of unruly children, all demanding conscious attention. Some come through loud and clear, and others are barely noticed. I suppose others aren't noticed at all. But these all wash around in my head, and a resolution or decision grows, and my indecision reduces. And often I'm barely conscious of deciding. But as I said, the processing of this sure feels like free will, and it arises from looking beyond the duality of free will or determinism. Some people who hold that duality and want to be true to their subjective experience of having free will try to attack the problem of determinism itself, and hoping that when you knock determinism over, you've got free will left standing. They often use quantum mechanics, in fact, Heisenberg's indeterminacy, which sort of sets a limit on what can be known. It gets pulled out by those who can't face their determined existence. I've been there and done that. But it's a false rescue. Heisenberg says that the determining factors are not known, not that they don't act. I think that we can take that ours is a determined reality. And after all, scholarship and science would be, and rational thought in general, would be pretty pointless otherwise. One of the problems with determinism is the related concept of predestination. Am I forced to say that my life is predestined if I say that it's determined? It's an easy conclusion to slip into. After all, if something is fully determined by all its causes, then a mind that knew those causes would know the outcome. It would seem meant to be. But I wonder about that. I think the problem of how we construct the concept that gives predestination an apparent reality is at fault. The metaphor we use to construct this implies an infinite mind or an infinite knowledge of all the determinants in my life. Anyway, predestination would imply that the system was closed, that all the factors were in. But it must be open, because the process uses the process as part of the process. For example, at some point there's a feeling that the indecision has sufficiently passed for a decision to have sufficiently surfaced. I feel that this argument becomes an infinite regress. I sense that predestination is an artifact of the notion of infinite knowledge, but it signifies nothing. What's happening in my thinking that causes this apparent contradiction between free will and determinism? I think that's got a lot to do with the same reason we feel drawn to invent supernatural concepts like soul or God. It's because of our difficulty with reconciling the two aspects or views of things, subjective and objective. It subjectively feels more than can be contained in objective explanations. What is this added something, though? If we add an objective component as a sort of hidden X factor, a soul or God or some sort of supernatural entity to account for it, but actually it's unnecessary to add this factor to the objective explanation if we notice that it arises in the different subjective perspective, where it belongs. In fact, I wonder if the supernatural is posited unconsciously in an attempt to account for the feeling of something. Feeling itself is not part of the objective perspective, just the description of feeling. Concepts of God would likewise be a way of accounting for the feelings of awe or dread or mystery, absolute nurturing, ecstasy that we feel in the subjective experience of our lives. But we can't find those things in an objective analysis of it. We can talk about them, but those feelings themselves don't exist in the objective experience or the objective explanation. The thing is, we all agree on, well, mostly, is objective experience, but subjective experience is very personal and susceptible to error or illusion, fantasy, or downright lies. So this is why we try to give this X factor an objective status by positing a God or a soul or free will or mind as an objective reality, rather than just leaving it in the realm of the ephemeral insubstantiality of subjectivism. We argue and agonize over the objective reality of all sorts of things, like souls, God, free will, mind. But maybe if we just understood the real status of the subjective, we wouldn't need to. Maybe.